Welcome back. It's the Talk Black Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed that ad break, albeit a little bit late. I think I dived right into the news there. But we had a wonderful chat during the ad break, and we are back with Tamar Nwafor, Cheryl Pheonix, David, Trevon, and Nehanda. Come anytime you like. I'm still saying that. That's the third time you've been late. But nonetheless,
I get lastminute.com conversation.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll take it. I retract it. Before she put it out there, she's quite right. Actually, do you know what? I've made a mistake. Yeah, you're right. Thank you very much. And you know that we love you here at the Talk Black Radio Show. And our guest, Suzanne, was unable to make it today because she hurt herself. So get well soon, and hopefully we'll see her again soon. And yes, thank you very much for jumping in the spot. Right, we are back. Male and female relationships we're talking about. And what were we discussing in the ad break? I think, no, actually, David, you had a point that you wanted to make. And then we should get in and hopefully it's a free-for-all. We'll all talk, say whatever comes to mind, and see if we can't share something with the audience about our own views and see if we can, share some information that might be helpful. So, David, go ahead, please.
Yes. Listen, it's very interesting. You cast certain aspersions about fear and stuff, but it's not that. I'm just listening. I had a point before, but during the break, it's made me think a bit more about words. And we think we communicate with the words, but it's not the words, it's the intention and all that comes in the words. So when we speak, like when you speak to a child or something, you could talk to a child about doing their work right, and you can come at it many ways. You come at it in the right tone, you get a result. You come at it in the wrong tone, the child, all the child hears is the tone. And if you come with frustration and it's got all that in the words, then that's all the child hears. So you might be saying the right words, but all they hear is the tone and the attitude packed in the words is getting in the way. So I get what the scripture talks about, the purification of the heart, as in, when the Jews, they talk about circumcision of the male organ. I'm going there. The male organ is circumcised because that skin around that area is removed because it contains dirt. So remove that piece of skin so that then in the process of giving life, there's no dirt in the process. So the scripture talks about the circumcision of the heart. Because there's a lot of things we want to say, but our heart, from our past experiences, got a lot of stuff in it that's affecting the word. So we might say the right words, but we've got work to do. We've got work to do, both male and female. Got work to do, male and female. And so I just want to say that point, but also it's when we speak about, for me, when you speak about the man's, what a man want, when I think on it more, and you might have a man that ain't got a job or whatever condition, and you think just a job would make him better. But if we'll really be honest in terms of a black man, if he was honest in himself, which sometimes I don't want to go there, we go real to the root of it, but the root is he actually wants his own country. You want your own businesses, you want your own community. You want to get up and say, this is my land. That's really the goal of a man. That's the only thing that makes sense. But our thing is, I'm generalizing, our thing is, okay, we were in a relationship. You made a point earlier, good point about relationship goals. So if our relationship goal is just to have a white picket fence and look happy and go on a holiday, I'm saying that's a goal. Sorry, I'm tapping. That's a goal. It's like that don't drive me. Live in some Hollywood movie or some hip hop video. That's not. That don't inspire me. It's having my own community. We're building for that. I'm not raising my children to go and work for the enemy, now to have companies that gonna more damage my community. Doesn't make sense to me. So we got to deal with the root up.
How does that look in terms of dealing with the root up? How does that look?
Okay. Basically, on a basic level for me, it's in our communication is what is our goals? And we realize, is it our goal or is it the enemy's goal for us? Because the woman is powerful influence of the man. And it's so important that she is orientated. Because whatever she's inclining to, she will influence the man and the family. So if she thinks that she's doing the right thing, but her right thing is actually what the enemy wants, then she's the best agent for the enemy. And vice versa. But with a female, she's powerful. So sometimes maybe it's that where we are communicating, and sometimes maybe we're communicating is not getting the result we want, and then we look at the person as something wrong with the person we're communicating with as the problem's there. Whereas maybe we've got to look at, maybe it's how I'm saying or what I'm saying, maybe I've got to review the whole situation. I'm not saying the man ain't in a mess, the man's in a big mess, but if those so did you know you got words left, right and center, you've got the whole dictionary, but it still hasn't got the result. So it's something fundamental, we got to go back to the drawing board here with this thing, because more words ain't gonna make no difference. And the man's going quiet because he ain't hearing, he's locked off.
Nothing to say.
It's locked off, like, okay, I'm playing like I'm there with you. And maybe get some trinkets for playing that game at night with you, just to play, just does that so he can keep that going. But other than that, why else would I listening to that? Because he ain't responding to you other than that.
And that's why it's important. I 100% agree with what you're saying, and what you're saying about relationship goals, and what I was saying to the brother about what, how do you vision your future? What are you looking for? So, for example, there could be another brother here that says, actually, I just want somebody where we can have a nice home.
Couple holidays a year and a picket fence.
Exactly, that's in terms of sustainable relationship. He would find somebody where that's what she aims for as well. But for you, that's on a different ball game, and that's where it takes a bit deeper. You've already gone through certain processes in understanding what it is that you're looking for. Now it's about finding, and I would definitely invite you down to our singles night. The next one is on the 1st of December. So yes, I can definitely provide details, and there's plenty of queens there.
We will touch base with that. Go ahead.
I get that, but also our time, our situation, it's like, to me, when these Europeans went to America, them man weren't thinking about, let's go on holiday on the beach. They were thinking about, let's establish a nation first. Yeah. You have a nation, then you have an environment of nation, then people can talk about holidays. And
talking about like the pioneers and the pilgrims kind of situation.
You've got a foundation now that you can do those other things with. I'm not saying you don't have those kind, you don't beach, but we're talking about beach, you don't have a community.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. You make a point if you want to.
I was just going to say that again. This talks to the different. If I said sorry. This talks to the different facets of the community. So, like you're saying, for somebody else, their goals, that's just what it is. Not everyone's thinking about nation building how you're thinking about it. What I did want to say though, you're 100% in terms of how women speak to each other, but speak to men in general. Like, that is a learning in and of itself. And I always say, especially with a lot of the work that I do, as women, we recognise there's a lot on our shoulders and everything, and we have to relearn some of our ways of womanhood. Does that make sense? And I think in terms of how we learn to express ourselves, that's part of nurturing, and we have lost the ability to nurture through our words. Do you get what I'm saying? So with children, and that's still not something that comes automatically, but nature will show us how to speak to our children. Does that make sense? But we think that there's, and I'm not saying talk to a man like a baby, but you nurture through your words. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Do you know what was said to me recently, and I'm sure on the other side of the radio someone is thinking this. Sisters have carried a lot of pain and trouble, and as brother said, us as men may be in a mess, and much of our mess then impacts on their reality. So then they, I think someone called it angry black woman syndrome kind of thing. But if that's what you're suffering with, granted, because you've been through stuff, as we've all been through stuff, how do we start to repair as a person who's really upset? And I think you were alluding to that when you began, as a person who's really upset or really angry and has legitimate reasons to be upset by the treatment that she may have or he may have received. How do we go about repairing ourselves to that point where we can be so calm as to allow our words to be what they've got to be, and, you know, nurture through words, and even as men start to treat our sisters better?
It's a work in progress, and I think it definitely starts with identity. It starts with understanding who you are, because a lot of us still are not there yet in learning who we are and about our history. So I think it starts with that. With that come patience and understanding for each other. We look at, once you look at yourself and you can love your blackness, truly love your blackness, regardless of what the society tells you about yourself, and you can look at another black person and you can feel that same way about them in terms of loving them, to me, you're halfway there. Yeah. Now it's then about re-educating yourself about some of the ingredients that's missing from our relationship. Like some of the workshops that we do at Kings and Queens United, this is what we aim to do, re-educating each other. So one of the
Give me an idea. Oh, sorry, you were going to do that. Give me an idea what that
One
is.
of the topic we covered was about love languages, and even though that may seem quite Eurocentric, it can help us to understand each other in the sense of communicating. How do you communicate love to each other?
You know, you said love languages, but I think I've read something on it, but tell me if I'm right with my understanding of it. Is that like, I feel love by being left alone in the evening, and someone being quiet, and the other person understanding that that's what you like, or that person needs gifts and you make sure you bring them home something for work and that's what they like? Is it that sort of thing?
That sort of thing, yeah. So there's like five different languages in terms of communicating love: acts of service, words of affirmation, a few others. And what that taught us at the session was, what we did, we let each couple went through the process of understanding their language, and what they found was, if I'm a man and you're the woman, or vice versa.
It is actually vice versa.
Vice versa, exactly. You could have been buying me so many things to show me that you love me, but in fact, what I actually need is your time. Valuable time spent at home. That's what means a lot more to me.
So is that just like, we basically just never had that conversation, like she just never told you it was that?
That's the thing though, when we get into relationship thinking of what we can get from the person, rather than understanding each other and understanding what works for each other. So with these workshops that we do, we aim to identify different things in relationship and language, how we communicate our words to each other, our preferences to each other. If somebody's upset, it may not necessarily mean that they want to talk about it straight away. Maybe if you understand your partner, you give him 5 minutes and then you'll be able to have a more practical conversation, as opposed to following them around the house trying to generate a response, and that just builds up more frustration and anger and separation potentially.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, I want to ask. A lot of the time, one of the things that I've kind of found is negative experiences get passed down a lot. And so when you're dealing with even like younger people, a lot of the time you find young women carrying baggage from stuff that they didn't even go through. But it's like whatever they've been told or things that they've seen or whatever, they hold on to that and then they bring it to a situation. And then when you're left to deal with it, it's a bit like, I don't even understand where this comes from. But a lot of it, I guess, is from the kind of conversations that have been had. So as part of that, as people who are more experienced, what kind of advice would you give in terms of
run for your life, son, run for your life?
No, but in terms of reflecting on the mistakes I made, because I think what happens a lot of the time is it's always a case of if it's a woman talking to her daughter, then she's going to tell her daughter what to be wary of, and so then the daughter enters a relationship looking like a smash and grab. So I want all of these things, and I'm wary of this much. And then, and then from the same perspective, but from the same perspective, then a brother now, like, you got to play the game, so you're trying to get as much as you can get without giving anything, and then it just creates a situation where nobody really wins.
You can't actually have a relationship. You can't have a
relationship because everyone's running game on everybody else. But I think a lot of that stems from the fact that from previous generations, no one's had honest conversations to go, you know what, these are the mistakes that I made, so when you get your partner, these are the things that you need to do, and you need to avoid making this. So I'm like, it's seen as everyone is here, and you all are more experienced in that. Like, what kind of mistakes would you say that you've made, or things that you've learned over the course of your relationships that you would actually pass on to help younger people make better decisions?
Great question. First of all,
what's my mind is that we are actually what we're talking into an illness at times.
Don't skate around the question.
No,
I'm not skating. I'm not going to skate.
Okay. You can't say that to David, because David wants to deal with every single point. I know. So please, David, please continue.
It's an illness. I'm thinking. It's an illness. No. It's like every animal, like you have a cat, and the cat has, you stroke it, but it's got claws. Why it's got claws is many things, but it's protect itself, it's defense. Everything created got its own defense. By nature, things defend itself. So the human being mentally, we have defense mechanisms. When you're going through, when you don't want to face painful memories and experiences, your mind tries to shut them away, but they're not there. They call it repression.
Got that.
You hide it in the back of the mind. So some of the stuff we say we just want to talk, we actually need therapy to deal with. It's therapy. It ain't just talk. It ain't just it's white people, when they know they're getting people, they need mental help. We need help. What Scripture talks about, when they didn't only, what's the term they use? Scripture, no, we weren't only robbed. This Isaiah, we weren't only robbed, we were robbed and spoilt. So it weren't just a taking, we were spoilt for a reason, so that now in the repairing, it ain't just you're unrobbing the thing, taking the thing, but you got to repair the thing. We need repair. So we're in that place. And so me skirting the question.
Oh God.
No. Well, am I skirting something? If I answer the question, I'm not. Giving the question again, so I'll answer it.
No, he was talking about what people are passing down those negative experiences.
Yes.
So he's coming up as a young man, and he's like, well, you're dealing with sisters who they've never been through these things, but they're still coming with that same reality.
Yes.
So how does he as a young man deal with that?
From my perspective then,
what have you learned as you know,
elders?
Yeah, what have you learned in terms of
what I've learned then from my perspective when I hear that question, I can't go Bible again. There's a part in the Bible that says, "Why is this man born blind?" And people asking, "Why is this person born blind?" And it was so God show His power that He can make this person see again. So that born blind is like, I have to look about my past. I don't really have a strong relationship with my mum. And that, so I'm like, when people talk about mums and stuff, I don't know that, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm kind of born blind in certain areas. People expect certain things from me that I don't have, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. So it's like you're demanding things from me that I don't know. I don't have that experience. So someone who hasn't had certain experiences that we get frustrated with, why aren't you acting a certain way? I weren't raised like that. So then how do you then encourage certain qualities in people that we weren't raised with? Because sometimes we're demanding things on people that they don't even know themselves. They never had that as a child. Didn't have that caring. They weren't looking out for others. They were just they were raised selfish.
Looking after themselves.
And we get frustrated why they ain't a certain way. It's not in them. They ain't got it. How do you now seed that person and nurture that and grow it in somebody? That's a whole next kind of mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Tamar, go ahead, because you was gonna answer the question. You started, and then David did that. we'll come back because I wanted to make a point on David's point, but I didn't want to go ahead of you.
In terms of stuff that we've experienced, and you mentioned about being a younger, and I'm just trying to recall the question in the way it was phrased. So in terms of seeing others and seeing situations that we've been through and thinking, well, if this is how it is, like, what hope is there for me? Is that how it was phrased?
Mm-hmm. More just in terms of the learning, like, so a lot of the time it's the negative aspects that are passed down, but people don't necessarily pass on their learning in terms of these are the things that I've learned, so these are the things you should do, these are the things you got to be wary of, but from a perspective of I've been through this is what I've learned. It's more a case of, these people you have to watch out for this, they'll take your money, they'll do this, they'll do, but it's all negative. It's not a balanced representation.
That's
of
true.
It highlights because they don't learn. That is the key. Oh, it highlights that they haven't learned. That is the key. That is the key.
So that's really the question. I'm trying to get a sense
Cheryl,
of.
You've been quiet. Can we get a comment from our Cheryl Pheonix?
I don't understand why we haven't learned the art of communication slightly better, even with relationships. But I always say to look at the older generation, the 70s upwards generation, because they seem to, like my auntie and uncle, they were married for 70-something years.
Wow.
They're old, and like they are each other's best friends, and most of see me, I'm maybe slightly different because most of my family, they're all married and all still married. And what I see with my aunties and uncles, and a lot of women won't like it, is that the way how my aunties treat my uncles and the way how my uncles treat my aunties is, it's just being respectful. It's like, it's not rocket science. Even when I was in my marriage, it wasn't rocket science. The way how I treated my husband, and even how some of my peer groups who happen to be single were like, oh, how come you serve your man? How come you allow him to make the decisions? Or how come you allow this? And it's like, well, it's not allowing it. It's like, I want him to, because some things I don't want to have to deal with. Like, he will just book a flight and we'll go on holiday. And it's like, well, why not? I don't know. For me, I didn't struggle. And my mum, I grew up in a single household, so to speak, but still the respect, and how my mum would never disrespect like my dad. My mum would never disrespect, like, there's certain things that just weren't done. So it was a learnt environment for me. And don't get me wrong, I was quite cantankerous when I got to a certain age. I was quite demanding, but because how my husband, the type of nature that he was, he saw beyond my annoyances and still loved the person that he loved, and we made it. Well, there was annoyances that I found in him, but I could, I still loved him as a man, and what he brought to the table, and what he loved what I brought to the table, and it worked. Even we went as far as talking about having children and where we're going to be buried and if we're going to be cremated. We discussed everything, and we were friends as well. So those different things. And when I look at my aunties and uncles and all of them, it is the same sort of things. It's quite funny because in our environment, my aunties serve their husbands. They do serve their husbands. They nurture their husbands. They nurture their sons. They do the same thing with their daughters. And a lot of, in this modern day, no one wants to do that. Oh, I ain't doing that. Why should I have to get his food first? Why can't he do it? I work too, and all of that. And it's like, well, that's not working for you clearly, which is why you're single and your child has no father, because you don't want to. But it's true. When I see it, I don't need no man. Really, your son needs, or your daughter needs her dad. So you need to find a way of working that out and being a bit more grown up about it. And I think we've taken on such an ignorant type of mindset that we're damaging the next generation that are coming. Like, literally, my sons are now young adults. My oldest son and his girlfriend, it was chivalry all the way. He picked her up from the bus stop with her child and put her in a cab and sent her home, and then she found his number from the cab. Chivalry is not dead. And I don't see why my son shouldn't. If she was a gold digger and whatever, he would find out eventually. But, he's been out with a couple of girls before that and it didn't work out, but he hasn't held a grudge and gone, it's like, oh, what do you know? It's like sometimes we've got to let things go and keep it moving and take people as they come and learn to, reinvest our time. Yes, it takes a while before you get the one. go for an arranged marriage then. But, you know, you've got to take the time to do it. And I find there's too much bitterness and people keep carrying their old baggage into new relationships and expecting the person, because he likes red, that means that, you know, you can't have red because my ex liked red. Well, I like red.
What do you learn?
Well, that's the thing. I would say drop your baggage. See, I haven't got an issue with men relationships myself. I've chosen to be happily single for a while, a long while. But yeah, I just think that you have to just be, each one you meet has to come with fresh eyes. Definitely, you have to come with fresh eyes and do some investigation, because as you said, there are gold diggers, there are women or men who are just in it for what they can get out. And you do have to be honest with yourself today that you can't go with rose-tinted spectacles, but actually have the conversation. There's no harm in talking. And it's like, I think the art of communication has been lost along the way, because everyone's on their phones. No one actually communicates. No one wants to meet up. People like me, I don't want to go nowhere. But, you know, you have to get back to that state of communicating. And that's where you'll find out from an early stage whether it's worth pursuing or you're friend-zoned. That's just my thoughts.
Oh, you're friend-zoned.
Friend-zoned.
Do sisters get friend-zoned?
Females get yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought that was a male phenomenon.
Yeah,
okay,
no.
right. Here's my question. I had a thought now.
Amiga Radio, 104.1 FM. News and views around your community.